I mean, we used to all be able to just enjoy pumpkin things in peace. And then Starbucks came out with the pumpkin spice latte, and everybody was putting pumpkin in fucking everything, and suddenly it was chuggy to like pumpkin stuff, and it's just not fair because pumpkin ravioli is delicious, and it's a classic. I mean, who doesn't like pumpkin ravioli? Come on. Anyway, that was my rant. Let's make pumpkin ravioli. During the holidays, I love to put a little extra elbow grease into making beautiful meals for loved ones. And yes, this will require a little bit of elbow grease. But the beauty of it is that you can make it in advance, put it in the freezer, let it hang out for a little while, and then pull it out one night and impress everybody with your handmade ravioli. To make the filling, you'll want to check out my pumpkin puree video. But we're gonna do things a little bit differently after the roasting. Dice some leeks and onions. Add some olive oil and butter to a hot pan. And saute your alliums until slightly golden and sweaty. Sweaty, yes, it's a great cooking term. You're going to add these to the food processor with salt, pepper, nutmeg, and brown butter with your roasted squash. Pumpkin squash. Blend, scraping down the sides occasionally until smooth. Adding a bit of water as necessary to keep things moving. Grab a large plastic bag or a large piping bag if you have one. Place it inside of a bowl with the edges rolled down around the sides. Scrape the puree into the bag, but be sure to take the blade out before you do. Don't be like me.
You know it's gonna fall out, and yet you continue to test if it's not gonna fall out. But it inevitably falls out.
Set this aside until ready to fill. Now, you'll want to head over to my fresh pasta making video and make yourself some dough. Since I don't have a countertop where I don't feel cramped, I decided to move the whole thing over to my dining table. I placed some plastic wrap down to protect the table and keep things sanitary. I will be using a hand crank pasta machine for this because I want my dough to be completely uniform. If you want to try hand rolling it though, I mean pasta grannies do it. Flour your surface. Don't forget this part. It is much easier to work in small amounts, so I cut my disc of dough into quarters.
So we do an initial rollout with our rolling pin to get it thin enough to go into the machine.
On the lowest setting, pass the piece through. If you put it through the machine when it's too thick, it will get like kind of bulbous in one area and the texture will get weird, and you just don't want that to happen. It's just not good. Fold it into thirds to create straight lines on each end. Go over once more with the rolling pin to get it back to a 1/4 inch, keeping the lines as straight as possible. You want everything nice and smooth. And then send through the machine at the lowest setting once more. From here, continue running it through the machine, going up a number before each pass. Occasionally reflouring each side so nothing sticks. You want the dough to be thin enough that the light can pass through. On my machine, I take it up to a 6, but not all machines are going to be the same. Flour well and set aside, and repeat this with the next 3 pieces. To begin assembling the ravioli, you're going to need a couple of things. I have some semolina flour. I have a sheet tray covered with parchment paper, a scrambled egg and a brush. I have a knife, this little tool, the makes a little fluted design to cut with. But if you don't have one of these, I will show you how to use a fork as well. And I have my filling. And I'm gonna show you a couple of different ways that you can do this. Step off the corner of your bag, make sure you have a bowl to keep it in, and start piping out small pools of filling in a row. 1 to 2 finger lengths apart on the upper half of your strip of dough. And make little circles. Brush the egg mixture above and in between each dot. Carefully fold the bottom half of the dough over the filling. Press down between each pocket to vacate any extra air.
You know, I'm always fussing over my ravioli.
And then close off the top as well. Use the fluted rotary cutter to seal off the top edge, and then cut between each pocket to separate the pieces. Transfer to a sheet tray that's been covered with parchment paper and dusted with semolina. If you don't have semolina, you can use regular flour, but the coarseness of the grain is better for keeping things from sticking. Keep everything in one layer. Do not stack the ravioli on top of each other or they will stick together. You may need to use a second tray depending on how much you're making. To use the fork method, simply repeat the initial steps. Instead of the rotary, use a knife to cut the pieces. Then press your fork down to crimp each side closed. You can use your scraps to make odd-shaped things, or just cut into strips for soup. To freeze this ravioli for later, please give this video a thumbs up because it's been pretty great so far, huh? Gotcha. Place in the freezer overnight on your sheet tray, and then transfer into a plastic bag the next day. You can store this in the freezer for about a month before it gets freezer burned. When ready to cook, bring a well-salted pot of water to a boil, brown some butter, drop in your ravioli, put some thinly sliced sage into the butter, followed by some toasted walnuts. Optional, but delicious. Thicken with a bit of starchy pasta water, and strain your ravioli into the butter. Plate with grated Parmesan and enjoy. Let me tell you, this pumpkin ravioli was delicious and I still have another serving of it in the freezer to enjoy later. Of course, you could make a large batch and feed it to your friends and family, or just eat it all yourself throughout the season. Thanks so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one where we have a bunch more seasonal and holiday themes coming up. Bye!
So then if I wanted to make it into a tortellini, I could do it like that. You got a little tortellini.